Fossil fuels still working, convince us. Gas, oh, it's a transition fuel. It's not a transition fuel. It's a fossil fuel. It creates greenhouse gas emissions. It leaks. It's methane. It's 82 times more powerful than carbon dioxide to heat up the atmosphere within 20 years. It's terrible. Fossil gas is not a transition fuel, but they still push that narrative, and politicians, they gobble it up because they don't know better.
Welcome to Ecofactors, a podcast from the Atlantic Wildlife Institute on Canada's East Coast. We sit down with people doing the real work and the communities pushing back against development that doesn't make sense for us or those we share the environment with. We are united with our guests from everywhere in honest conversations about what it actually takes to protect the earth that we call home. Jean-Philippe, how are you today?
I'm good, Lisa. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thank you for coming. It's actually when we first started the opposition against the gas plant, you were one of the first people that I contacted before the coalition even existed, because you and I shared a media story, I think, with CBC.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't remember that.
Yeah, so now we're on screen again, but this time I'm making the questions. Yeah. So welcome to Ecofactors. We're a few episodes in now, but it's still early days. So thank you for trusting us to put your face.
Absolutely.
This conversation up online. This podcast is run by Atlantic Wildlife Institute. So we're really grateful that we have this platform to share important voices. Speaking of important voices, you are in the academic field of teaching environmental studies at the University of Moncton, or Université de Moncton. I realize that you work in French and that French is your first language. So I appreciate you doing this interview in English for me.
It's a pleasure.
University of Moncton is on unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq First Nation. Can you tell us a little bit about how you arrived into this particular role?
Yeah, that's a good question. Try not to be too long, not to bore people, but my mom was an academic. She was a professor of public health and doctor, and she got me my first jobs in her department. I was 17, and I had never left universities since then. I've been through 4 different universities: Université de Montréal, University of Victoria, University of Oregon, and now University of Moncton. I was lucky enough to land a really good position here at UMoncton, and I'm very happy now because it allows me to use the position to do what I'm really interested in doing, studying the structures of corporate power and how they impact our environment and our climate, and also be able to teach about these topics.
Can you explain what that means, the study of the structure of corporate power?
Well, I was trained as an anthropologist and sociologist. It's a subfield of sociology is economic sociology, and part of economic sociology looks at, among many other things, looks at institutions. So the different organizations that constitute societies in which people organize, where people work. You can think as the university system as an institution made up of all the individual universities. We have the health system, the education systems are different institutions. And one of these institutions is the corporations, or the corporate system as a whole, made up of all the corporations that exist in, say, Canada, the United States, or in the world. So that's the institution I'm most interested in, the corporation as a system of power through which rich people get richer. And
it's interesting that you mention anthropology, like the study of anthropology. I did a little bit of anthropology when I was doing my international development degree. And one of the courses I did was an ethnography course. It's like the in-depth study of something, a culture that is foreign to you as the writer. And you could be like, you could go to Africa and into the Congo and study the culture there, which would be very different from Riverview, New Brunswick, where I grew up. It's interesting, like my link back to this is the anthropology or ethnography understanding of the corporate structure and the rich getting richer is so far from where we are, I feel, as a grassroots kind of people on the ground fighting big oil and gas and fighting the injustices of that high corporate structure. And I woke up this morning thinking, like, can I put myself into like an empathetic position to understand where they're at? Like, do they have children? Do they have grandchildren? What's the ethnography look like if you're writing about I won't go as far as the Trump world, but somewhere along that line of a culture we don't understand, but we have to fight somehow.
That's a very interesting question. Well, I must say, I never did ethnography myself. I was doing my master's, and they discouraged doing field work for a master's because it's too complicated. And I wanted to study the Zapatista movement that was at its beginnings in Mexico. It was a few years in. I was doing that in 2000. Right at that moment, I was thinking, am I going to go there and so on. The Mexican government sent the army, and it was impossible to go there. So I ended up studying text instead. But there's such a thing as the anthropology of the elite. And I had a professor who was doing that, looking at the Italian elite around the Vatican, among others. There's people doing that, just getting into these high-level circles and trying to understand how people think. There's sociologists who did that as well, got interviews with corporate heads. So a lot of the literature on corporate power actually is based on interviews with people in these positions, and trying to get a window on how they think, how they organize, why they do this or that. Because one of the questions, you said rightly, and that's something I wonder, do they have kids? Do they understand what the climate crisis is? What are the constraints that they have to deal with? And how do they personally do that? And then as a group, these are really interesting questions. I don't really have answers to them, except that from a sociological perspective, humans exist within institutions and within the broader structures of societies. And so these people, the individual capitalists, rich people, elite, high-level politicians, you name it, they're part of these institutions. And so there's things that they can do, and there's things that they can't do. So if you take, for example, Paul Polman, he's a Dutch corporate head. He was CEO of the multinational Unilever. They make all the soaps, have the soaps you have in your bathroom, I'm sure, a bunch of foods and so on. He was really wanting to give a more environmentally friendly direction to the corporation. And one big thing he wanted to do was get rid of quarterly reports to shareholders so that he could focus more on long term and not just the next quarter's profits. Shareholders pushed back against it, and they kept things going business as usual. That's an example of one person who I think probably had good intentions, but was within that structure that limited his range of action, what he could possibly do. So makes you think of if you want to change things from the inside, well, you're within an institution and you have to understand how it works to understand what levers you can activate and how you can change the institution from the position you're in. So that's something that I learned doing sociology, and that I'm interested in teaching people to empower people, and also to reflect on my own position within academia. What can I do within academia to help things move in a good direction towards a more just society?
So do you feel like academia is a good footing for fighting something like the Riggs plant in Tantramar? I mean, do you feel like the textbooks are coming to life right now?
Some of them are actually. One of the most important textbooks, and that's Sociology 101. It's C. Wright Mills' Sociological Imagination, where all the undergrads in sociology get to read that. And his message is what the sociological imagination is. It's the capacity of individual people to make sense of the broad historical movements that they live through and understand where their personal troubles are coming from. That they're not only because they're, oftentimes poor people get blamed as they're lazy, they don't work enough, they made bad decisions, blah, blah, blah. If you look at it sociologically through the sociological imagination, you can see where people are at. And people in these situations can understand it's not because they're lazy, they work 2-3 jobs, but minimum wage makes it that they can't make ends meet nonetheless. And so understand where this comes from. Why is minimum wage so low? Why do corporations need a low minimum wage? So that they don't have to pay their workers too much and they can provide profits and dividends for their shareholders, and so on. So understand where we stand within these social institutions and structures.
Mm-hmm. So how do you feel like academia is placed? What kind of advantages do you have by being in academia? I want to obviously touch on the letter that recently came out, so you could maybe talk about that collaboration as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's really important because oftentimes people outside academia, there's the stereotype of the ivory tower. People do their little research and nobody knows about it except a circle of 5 or 6 experts who can understand them. That's true in some fields. There's usually more people in that who can understand what we're doing. But what academia does, it does have a bunch of constraints, especially in larger, more high prestige universities. For example, people are pushed to publish a lot, to get research funding for the university because that's part of their income as well. And their boards are staffed with corporate representatives and their allies, so prestigious lawyers, accountants, and the like. Corporate donors have a power to pressure universities in various ways. They can withdraw donations, for example. They know people on the boards, the presidents. They're part of the same circles. They think a little bit the same way. They see universities as businesses that are supposed to provide value for governments and the public and everybody else, especially corporations. So you have these sets of constraints. I'm lucky I'm at a small non-corporate university here. The board is mostly regular people, small business people from Frankfurt, New Brunswick. And so I don't have all these pressures. So it gives me a really good space of freedom where I can pursue the research I'm interested in. We have academic freedom, so we're allowed to do whatever research we think is important, but also take on initiatives like getting involved around the RIGS project and organizing other academics to voice their opposition to that project. Part of our work as academics is to get involved in the community. It's not as prestigious on the CV as high-ranking journal publications and so on, but we have part of our time that we're supposed to do that. Actually, we're involved like in various committees inside the university, but also elsewhere in the community. And so that kind of work fits. And I checked with my dean, and he said, yes, that's absolutely part of the service component of your job, to provide your expertise to groups who are addressing different issues. So that's why I'm very happy to work with the coalition and provide any help I can and take on different initiatives, like the letter we did, which was actually my colleague Mario Perry's initiative. It was his idea, and he came up with the draft, and then I took the project on.
Okay. And just for anybody who's listening who might not know what the coalition is, it's the Protect the Chignecto Isthmus Coalition, which is made up of roughly 20 kind of publicly spoken organizations, NGOs, institutions, community organizations across New Brunswick. And now it's kind of expanding into Prince Edward Island and Nova Scotia because they're having some similar issues and kind of fighting the same fight, which is good. More people, more voices, a lot of voices behind that. And this kind of satellite conglomerations are starting to form, which is nice because I was speaking with Renee Turcotte of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment recently, and they have spoken up against the gas plant. So you have all of these doctors representing more than 50 physicians in New Brunswick alone, but then the national organization would easily sign on. They're anti-cancer, for example, anything that causes cancer. So the emissions from the plant directly linked in over 250 studies now. It's pretty obvious that it's not just like in test format, this information. And now with the 120 or 130 academics from 4 different institutions, can you talk a little bit about the specifics of the letter?
Yeah, we actually got to 140 signatures.
Okay.
Before the end of the hearings last week. And well, the specifics, I mean, we built a list of arguments why we're opposing that plant. And it's, well, health is a big concern. We know that emissions from gas plants are not good for health. People with lung issues, like me, will suffer from these emissions. It's Also important to know that what would be burned in that plant, if it's built, would be fracked gas from the US, from Pennsylvania. And we had a big fight against fracked gas here, shale gas. And so there's no reason we would support using shale gas from elsewhere if we don't want it here. That's another reason. And the other reason, main reason that was a lot discussed at the hearings is economic. Today, economically, it doesn't make sense to build gas plants like that. We heard the experts at the hearings. Battery storage is now less expensive, as was predicted things would get to a long time ago. At least 10 years ago, we knew that batteries were going to fall in price and would get to be competitive with fossil fuels in the near future. That's where we're at now. And unfortunately, NB Power doesn't want to update its calculations, but hoping the board will understand the argument. So that's the other big thing we put on the letter. And another of the reasons we should be wary about such a plant is the dependence on the U.S. NB Power decided to hire an American company based in Missouri to build the plant and run it. So all NB Power would do is pay for the input, the gas or diesel fuel, and then buy the electricity from the company. So that's a pretty big dependency, especially knowing that the on-off switch would be located in Missouri at the company control station. So depending on how the relations go with the U.S., hopefully it doesn't get there, but that can be a pretty substantial risk to our energy security, just judging on that aspect. And even if you put the environmental aspects aside, which are really important, there's also the aspect that you know more than I about, biodiversity in the area. You mentioned to me, I remember it's a moose migration corridor. There's a lot of birds, threatened species that use the area. So all the pollution that's going to affect humans is going to affect all the wildlife and the plants as well. And the other, another thing we need to remind people of is that there's no Indigenous consent. The Mi'kmaq as a group have not consented to that project. They haven't even been consulted. Until recently, I heard that MTI is conducting an Indigenous rights assessment right now, but I don't know more about the process.
It's interesting that there's no pause to wait for them to finish their risk assessment. We hear that they're doing one, but not we, but the proponents is kind of like trudging along as though the answer from that doesn't matter. Like, why would you build a really expensive road and construction and the construction site and the staff and the 24-hour security and the lighting systems and then the water testing and whatever, if you were not going to get, if you actually cared about the answer from the Indigenous community? I mean, it's just another form of disregard for unceded territory, which how many times can you steal? In how many different ways can you steal the land? Yeah. And how many times can you sign off and say sorry? I mean, they did this in Australia when I was living in Australia doing my master's there. They had the creation of the sorry day. So they have the big day once a year where everybody's sorry. And then the next day, literally, they just start dragging people off the land that they're trying to protect again. Like the land and water protectors are shown on the front page of the newspaper being actually physically dragged off the land. Can you speak to the Indigenous rights on a little deeper level? I know that you're somewhat involved.
Well, yeah, I do work, wouldn't say with Indigenous groups, but researchers in my research team have made really good, deep connections with Mi'kmaq water protectors. One thing I said, well, maybe backtrack to, it's always like that. It's been like that. I grew up in Quebec in the 80s and 90s, and 1990 was a big political moment for me. I was 14, and it was the Oka crisis, right where I lived. I grew up in Laval. There's two Mohawk Kanien'kehá:ka communities right there, one on the north shore of the St. Lawrence River, one on the south shore, and that whole crisis erupted. It was all over the news, and I could see the blatant racism and so blatant that there was not even any consideration. People, some local business people decided to just cut down a forest that was an ancestral cemetery to build a golf course.
Wow.
That's what started the crisis. And then local and provincial governments backed them up because of, I don't remember the details enough, but something as nonsensical as that. Would you go on any Christian cemetery anywhere in Canada and decide you're going to build a golf course or whatever you want to build there?
Uh-huh.
That would be unthinkable by even any developer. But if it's an Indigenous cemetery, doesn't matter. It's like they're not there; they're invisible, and they became very visible there.
It kind of brings me to this concept of like this back to the structures. I since starting this project, I'm not convinced the structures are very structured. You know what I mean? So we have UNDRIP, we have the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act, which became Canadian law in 2021, which I guess like maybe nobody was paying attention because we were all like so enthralled with the COVID pivoting. But that is supposed to allow triggers for duty to consult anytime something is happening, such a big development like rigs in Tantramar, New Brunswick. But these words are in place, but where is where is it when we need it, you know?
Yeah, we'd have to ask a legal scholar for the details, but as when it concerns Indigenous rights, as title holders of this part of what's now called Canada, they just get ignored. They have their communities, and then we talk about reconciliation and use all these big words and really want to respect their right. I was told the Prime Minister really wants to do the right thing with the Indigenous First Nations in the province and all that. But when it comes to comes to shove, the corporations act as if they weren't there, as if they didn't exist. NB Power acts as if there's no Indigenous title here, as if there was no treaties, as if there was no UNDRIP, and they just decide to start that huge project that, as you were saying, looks like it was decided before anybody heard of it, even the Prime Minister. So they just ignore them because they say there's not going to be any consequences. So the laws, I mean, they need to be enforced. If nobody enforces them, it's like they don't exist.
Yeah, they need to be enforceable.
And corporations know when they run the risk. They have their risk assessment teams, and they assess that's not a risk. So they just go full steam ahead. And they know that as faster they can move, the more chances they can have the project going before anybody can react. That's what they've been trying the whole way.
So speaking of cogs like wrenches thrown into the cogs of the systemic structural wheel that's working against the neighbors and the people and the nature and the wildlife and actually higher institutions and the whole concept of intelligent species. Where's the letter now? So the letter was going to Premier Holt and a few others. Was there progress? Do you feel like it might have slowed something down? Did you have a response? Are you happy? Or what's the next step?
Well, I was happy by the academic response. We got our first 100 signatures within 24 hours.
Wow.
The unions at U Moncton at least supported us right away, and we made contacts in the other universities. It circulated very fast. It was very nice to see that opposition in academia represents opposition more broadly. And I know of many colleagues who did not sign because of different professional reasons. But we could have gotten many more signatures as well by other people who opposed the project but didn't want to sign for different reasons, I respect. So it was a fun process to see that support. It did help create some awareness of the project. And we sent it to the news outlets. Many of them picked it up. Acadie Nouvelle published it right away. The Telegraph Journal published it on the next Tuesday during the hearings. And the Media Co-op, War Times. So that was nice. There was Radio Canada had it at the top of its news feed the next day. We sent it to the Premier and all MLAs, including all ministers. We got no response from any politician. I don't know if they even looked at it or if they just counted it as one more letter in their inbox of people who are unhappy with the project. But these things are, kind of letter is important. And now we have campaigns against the cuts in higher education that are using that tactic as well. There's petitions and letters circulating for people to sign. And you send it directly to politicians so they can gauge how much opposition there is. Academics do have a fair amount of weight. We do have expertise. We did work hard to get our PhDs. We understand many things about the world. So there's that weight. Even if we're not all expert in energy and climate issues as such, people can understand the basics pretty easily. It's pretty easy to understand. You don't build gas plants today. My 10-year-old, 11-year-old knows that. But so there's that weight towards politicians who think about re-election. So they think, okay, all these people sign off that letter. What does that mean? Moncton, a lot of people from Moncton, about half the signatories. Okay, Moncton, we have a lot of ridings there. We need them to win the next election. Okay, well, they gauge. And they take that into account in terms of re-election prospects and also of broader social agitation, which is never good for governments and companies. So if people decide, if the EUB approves a project, for example, and mobilize and go physically block the site, which has happened before in the province, so they can gauge what's likely to happen according to how much opposition they perceive. And there's the other effect is through the media and through building public awareness. So the media share the news, people read about it. Some people might have seen that without having been aware of the project, makes them think. People can take position. And some people will be for the project. Daniel Alain says unequivocally yes to that project. Well, he's conservative. We expected that from him. We know where he stands. So people take position around the issue as they become aware of it. And of course, it's obvious that the majority in the province is opposed. The majority of Francophones are opposed. The Liberals know that. They need the Francophone votes to stay in power. So I think they need to think about it pretty seriously. And I also know that some of their MLAs are opposed to the project, but for different reasons, they can't really necessarily speak out against it. But it's not a done deal inside the government.
So I also have been in the field of environment for a long time. And when I was doing my master's, it was I worked while I was going to school. So I worked as an energy auditor, and then I was a waste education officer. And I worked in a lot of fields where you're always speaking to the public. And you would know the same thing that you've heard every possible excuse. I was banning the plastic bag in Fremantle, Western Australia, which was a successful campaign of 6 months.
Yeah.
From zero campaign to successfully changing the policy and banning just the free distribution of oil is what that is, that doesn't decompose and chokes pelicans. In this beautiful coastal town of Fremantle in the west of Australia, it's a gorgeous place. And they don't have plastic bags now. And it's been maintained actually by the mayor of the town, who used to be, when I was doing my master's, he was the chair of the sustainability department. So nice segue from that department straight into the mayor position. And then we worked kind of together to make that law happen. Throughout that, I heard every possible reason of why we need plastic bags. So you start to get kind of all of the jokes about my smart car. Are you going to bring that inside with you? All the things that I've heard it all. I've heard why you can't reduce your garbage. I've heard how sustainability is not a thing and climate change isn't real. And actually, when I was doing my master's, I'm going to date myself, but you still could choose whether to believe in climate change or not. It was some kind of you're choosing from one of the 300,000 Hindu gods or something. It's this mythical thing that you're I choose Ganesh because I like elephants, But actually, climate change is very real. And I think now with actually having the storm hit you in the face, no matter where you live, you're starting to realize that yes, the climate is changing, and yes, we are increasing it, and all the things that go along with it. So you can no longer do that. So I loved in the letter that it said that it's just nonsensical. It's just stupid. It's just nonsensical to put a new fossil fuel plant in there when we have better options. How do you feel it's changing for you over the time that you've been in academia or working with the community? Do you find it more hopeful? Are there rays of hope that are coming from different places? When I heard you talking about the letter, and it's here were the wins even though Susan Holt didn't even take a minute to answer all of these people from academia, which is kind of crazy to me. Like, what is the job if it's not that?
I didn't expect her to answer.
Well, what's she up to?
I mean, I wrote a personal letter back in September or October, and 2 months later, I get a canned response from the Minister of Energy telling me to go look at the super nice environmental assessment that they're doing, and then you look at it and you see that's empty. There's no environmental assessment in there.
Right.
Except some details here and there that basically is going to rubber stamp the project. So that's the only response I got. Well, that was better than nothing, I guess, but that's they did a mass mail to everybody who sent letters that way. I didn't expect anything to hear anything back, but I still know that there's some impact down the road, even if I don't get a response. And I could write the response myself if I wanted, anyways. So I don't really need it.
We are not going to put the gas plant there because there's too much opposition. And thank you for your letter and all of your work on this. And
yeah, exactly. That's a nice response I would like to get.
The response we all want
to get by a person who cares about the real issues and who understands the real issues. That's a problem. Politicians don't have a training. They're lawyers. They're business people. They don't understand the issues, and so they're very sensitive to the people around them to brief them, and who briefs them, and who lobbies them. And then if lobbyists have their arguments honed in, they're trained for that. They have decades of experience, and so they're very convincing. And so for somebody who doesn't really know what climate change is about, well, they may think it makes sense. And you know what? Actually, 2-3 years ago, a gas plant like that might actually have made sense, even environmentally, because it is true that NB Power is not wrong the whole way. I think it is true that if you avoid running Belledune or Coulson Cove, you would have less emissions. The problem is you need to dismantle all fossil infrastructures now, even as you ramp up renewables. So what you need to do is degrow. People don't like that word degrowth, but that's what needs to happen now. There's no other way around. Degrowth proponents have been saying that for at least 2 decades. When I started my advanced studies in environment, they've been saying that if you don't voluntarily have a plan for degrowing the economy, the climate is going to degrow your economy, and then you're going to be stuck with an unmanageable crisis, and your economy is going to collapse. So that's what we're facing now. It's collapse of the economy. It's starting through something that makes sense, but I hadn't foreseen insurance companies. And people have been researching insurance companies and their response to the climate crisis for a while. Also stuff I heard about when I was starting studying. But now there's whole swaths of the United States you can't get a house insured. So what does that mean? Nobody's going to buy a house if they can't get it insured. If you don't buy a house, the housing market crashes. And then we saw in 2008, what happened when the housing market crashes. The whole economy tanks. The Chignectoismus, that's something. It's too bad didn't come up at the hearings. But can you insure that plant? Likely not.
I've been looking for who the insurance company is, actually.
Well, that's a big risk that they're taking if they're going to insure a $1 billion plant there, because that's one of the 2 most vulnerable areas in North America.
That's right.
To sea level rise and hurricanes and the like, they better build it solid, because it's certain it's going to withstand at least 1 hurricane within its first decade. Plus, potential forest fires around it, and so on and so forth. Drought, they need lots of water. Well, droughts are going to affect it as well, and that's across the economy. So that's if you don't degrow, it's going to tank.
Interesting. How do your students feel about this kind of shift in seriousness? Like, I feel like I heard that eco-anxiety is a new field that psychologists are going into study. I have friends who are specifically going into eco-anxiety management. And I was like, what's that? Like, we didn't have that when I was in school, and we all might have a level of it at this point. Like, can I call a psychologist to help me deal with the fact that I feel like the world is ending and my children won't have a future? Are your students concerned about that? Do you experience that kind of thing with your students? Do you get questions from them?
Those who are aware, they're really concerned. They're really eco-anxious, and that's a colleague of mine wrote a book that touches on the topic. Anxiety is a complex phenomenon, and you can be like really eco-anxious to the point of not being able to function, which is a psychological condition. But if you're not feeling some level of stress about what's going on, that's another psychological condition you need to deal with. Because if you're not stressed out reading the environmental news, there's something that's not working so well with your empathy, with your psychology somewhere.
Sociopath.
Because, well, I don't know, I'm not a psychologist. I can't speak to diagnostics as such, but if you read the news, something's going really wrong. And you understand that people need to do something about it. So it's actually being realistic to understand that something needs to change. Now, if you can't sleep because of it, you should see a social worker or psychologist. And there are trainings now. People are trained better and better. Now, it's not even such a new field. People have been talking about it for at least 5 to 10 years now. Psychologists, social workers can get training to address specifically these issues. My kids have eco-anxiety. For sure, my oldest, he understands the issues. He asks questions, so I answer. And he's very worried about the future. And he says that he has to bracket it out so he can fall asleep at night.
Wow.
He's not the only one. He's not the only one.
So you're experiencing that firsthand?
Firsthand, well, that's same for me. I don't think about it too much before going to sleep at night.
So I feel like on the other hand of things, so we know like what's wrong and what's bad and whatever. And I'm always looking for like the solution. I feel like if I was in Premier Holt's shoes, I would be so excited about this opportunity to fly in with my cape on. It's like a SH written across, and I'm like flying through the sky. And I'm like, guess what? I'm saving us all from this terrible monster called Riggs. And I have an easy, already handed to me solution by NR store called batteries. And they already have their expressions for interest out. They already have their plans for like increasing the renewables. Let the renewables come in maybe a synchronous condenser or two, and then put your batteries. And then you are the one who saved the day, and everyone's going to vote for you. Again. And again, if you keep doing the right thing and then just take the cards that are being handed to you, this is like, and so what exactly is the fight in Tantramar a proxy for? Like, what could the other side look like if Riggs is canceled?
Well, yeah. 2 things I can say about that. First of all, what the fight is about, it's about a fossil fuel interest. I think, fossil fuel companies have known exactly what's going on since the 60s. They had their own in-house scientists. They have their reports. Now that's been documented. They hid the information. Now through a lot of journalistic and academic work, that information's been unearthed. And we know that ExxonMobil and all the other large fossil fuel companies knew in the 1960s. There was plenty of time to change things back then, but they would have had to go bankrupt. They couldn't allow that. They're corporations. They have shareholders to keep rich. And so they decided to bury the information and to fight it. When scientists like James Hansen went public in 1988 at the American Congress, they started fighting tooth and nail to protect their profits, prolong the use of fossil fuels as much as possible. Now they've been seeing that it's not necessarily an easy win for them anymore. And so they're still trying, but they're looking for small contracts like that. Some new infrastructure will convince the Prime Minister of Canada to build a gas line to supply New Brunswick from Alberta under the pretext of energy security for the country, nation building, yada, yada. And so they're still somewhere underneath. They lobby politicians 3 times a day, 100 times a year only at the federal level. That's documented. And that's not counting provincial lobbying. So there's a lot of work that they're doing to push their products. It's like tobacco. Tobacco companies kept pushing their products. They knew it was cancerous. They would hire doctors who needed more money for some reason to advertise for them and to try to convince people that cancer is not connected to tobacco use. They continue to push their products, and now that it's not too into smoke anymore, well, they came up with a new thing, vaping. They sell little devices. You can consume flavored tobacco. same health effects. They're still at it. Same thing for fossil fuels. They hire the same consultants. It's all the same people. Fossil fuels still working, convince us. Gas, it's a transition fuel. It's not transition fuel. It's a fossil fuel. It creates greenhouse gas emissions. It leaks. It's methane. It's 82 times more powerful than carbon dioxide to heat up the atmosphere within 20 years. It's terrible. Fossil gas is not a transition fuel, but they still push that narrative, and politicians, they gobble it up because they don't know better, and they hear that more often than the alternative discourse, which is batteries are cheaper, batteries are better for everyone, and so on. So that's the first thing. Fossil fuel interests are pushing that as much as they can, anywhere they can. Second thing, what to do. I just read an amazing book right here by my colleague, Emily Eaton. I recommend it to everyone who's interested in the topic right now.
Good cover.
Climate Action, beautiful cover.
I always judge a book by its cover.
Judge it by its cover, best book I've read in a decade. It's Land Back. Premier Holt, she wants to uphold Indigenous interests. She needs to think, educate herself, and think in terms of land back. Give back the land to Indigenous people, co-manage the land. Not all white settlers go back to Europe. We were not born in Europe. We live here. We need to live together on this land. We need to keep taking care of it so that it can keep taking care of us for the future generations. And who knows how to do that best? It's the Mi'kmaq, it's the Westokwe, it's the Peshtimakudi, it's the Indigenous nations that we share the land with. And wonderful thing, we have treaties with them. We have peace and friendship treaties. That's exactly that. We're on this land and we're going to share it. And they're going to do their thing and we're going to do our thing and we're going to respect the land. So Premier Holt is in a position to enact that and start making the right decisions. She should go down and consult with the elders if she's really interested in doing the right thing with Indigenous nations.
I love that.
That's what I can say about that.
She has such a great position right now. It's just like, it's so, she could be, I have faith.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be in this role if I didn't have faith.
Same for me.
In that picture that's actually in the integrated resource plan of New Brunswick with like the sunflowers and the blue field and the mother and the baby and everything's great. Like that's the future that I have faith in. And yes, there will be adaptation that we will have to take to plan for the floods that are going to happen and the wildfires that are going to happen. But at least we could do better than this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we can do better. Mm-hmm. When you could really do better when the fossil fuel institution themselves, the International Energy Agency, was created to uphold fossil fuel interests across the world and coordinate with companies and the oil-producing countries and so on. It told us in 2021 that we need to stop building fossil fuel infrastructures. So we need to not build any more pipelines, gas plant, nothing like that ever again. So it's the fossil fuel top lobbyist that's telling us that.
Right.
To be in line with what scientists, the mainstream scientists and climatologists are telling us at the IPCC. And what the critical climatologists are saying is we're in much deeper trouble than even the IPCC is saying.
Mm-hmm. I have
so heard. We need to start dismantling that infrastructure, taking it apart.
This hour has been amazing with you. I'm really happy and honored actually to share this same fight with people like yourself and to share the space with you. So thank you for taking the time out of your really busy schedule. I always end all of the episodes with a couple of just personal questions. I was going to ask you what you're reading. I guess are you still reading The End of This World, or are you reading something else right now?
The End of This World. Well, just finished reading it. So I'll move on to something else. I'm not sure what. I've got a good one here. Workers of the Earth.
Oh, cool.
About alliances with unions around the climate crisis and expanding unionizing to the workers who do all the care, labor, paid or unpaid. So the mothers educating their kids, parents educating their kids, mothers taking care of them, education workers from kindergarten to grade 12, Indigenous nations who've been working to take care of the land since time immemorial. The small farmers that we depend on for our food security, all these people, how they can and need and are coming together in this fight to keep a livable planet. I haven't read it, but I know it's going to be a very interesting book, and I've got piles of books.
Yeah, sure, join that club.
So that's just the one that's on top right now.
Yeah, I'm in that club. If you could interview somebody, anybody, who would you take some time with, and what would you ask them?
I would interview Indigenous elders from the Mi'kmaq and Westokwe, thinking about water protectors like Doreen Bernard, Elder Doreen Bernard, who I was lucky to meet last October, and Elder Don Augustine from Elsiboktuk, people like that who understand our relationship to the earth and to all living beings. I think they're the people we need to give voice to, and who have a lot to say. We can learn a lot from them. I've been learning from them recently, and I'll keep learning from them, I hope, in the future, because they're a source of deep inspiration to change our mindset from the mindset of gotta go to work the next day and so on, and we need to keep the money flowing and yada yada, to a mindset where we're in a world of relationships, not only with other human beings, but with all the animals we depend on, all the plants we depend on for our medicine, for our food. We still eat plants and animals every day. And so we have relationships with them on the material level, of course, but also we can also see spiritual relationships, because you have to kill the animals to eat them. And that's problematic for every culture in the world. So that's the kind of thinking I'm going towards right now. That's the people I want to talk with right now.
I would have to agree with you. I hope their voice gets louder and louder as the days go on.
Yeah.
JP, thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you, Lisa, for your time. I'm not sure who's the busiest, yourself or me, but thank you for taking the time to record these podcasts and share them broadly.
My pleasure.
Really appreciate your work.
Yeah. We'll see you soon.
I'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.